Uh, Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to BlackHat Arsenal. I'm Yogesh and I'll be talking about the reNgine, an automated reconnaissance framework, a tool that I developed a couple of months back for information gathering during the web application penetration testing. Um, for the next 30 minutes, I will be talking about reNgine tool, the idea behind reNgine, how I started, and the motivation behind building yet another recon tool. I will also spend some time on talking about the abilities of reNgine and the future of reNgine as well, and how are we going to take it further. I have some demos as well, so we will spend majority of the time on demo. Um, and also during the demo, I very often get asked about the installation of reNgine and how to use it more effectively. So during the demo, we will also get to see the installation steps for reNgine and using it more effectively. Also, there are a couple of features that are unreleased when I'm recording this talk and have demo on them. Hopefully, by the time you watch this, it should be December 9th, 10th, and I would have already released. So you would not have hard time following up with the instructions. After this demo, we will also have a short Q&A where I'll answer your questions related to reconnaissance and reNgine. On a quick note, I'm open for suggestions. Feel free to raise any issue in GitHub for feature requests if you think that needs to be there in reNgine. Any issues if you think any issues if you have while installing reNgine or while using reNgine, I'll be happy to help. But please refer to the documentation as well. I'll be happy to resolve the issues or develop any new features. It might take some time, but yes, I'll consider them. With it, let's get started with a quick introduction about me. So my name is Yogesh and I'm from Nepal. I work as a research software engineer for a company called TRJ Research and Development, where I primarily focus on cyber threat intelligence, and we build our off-the-shelf cyber intelligence fusion brain that are helping to secure better lives and are being used by various law enforcement agencies for a full-blown investigation. Apart from that, I also talk and train about IoT security, hardware hacking, and sometimes in mobile application security as well. So I've been an active speaker in the community and spoken at conferences like Hack in the Box Cyber Week, Grey Hack, Open Source Summit, and Kazakhstan. These are the few conferences that I've spoken. Apart from that, when I'm not building and breaking technologies, I spend most of my time with my dog Jasper. He actually must be roaming around here right now. He had just fractured his leg as well, and I need to take care of him. That's pretty much about me. So let's get into today's topic. So why I built reNgine? So when I started doing bug bounties and web application penetration testing, of course, recon was a very important phase. One problem that I faced while doing recon was that there was no any tool that could automate the end-to-end reconnaissance, and of course, no tool could help me correlate the data produced by the various tools. So during the recon phase, we do the subdomain discovery, technology detection, you grab the screenshots and probably the endpoint discovery as well. There are really great tools out there that does this. And I've used tools like Ecopon in the past and a couple of other tools. They work really great. But the missing dot is the correlation, and of course, tools like Ecopon do not have a database support. But the initial idea of reNgine came from tools like Ecopon only. Also, when I was doing the recon with the available open source tools back then, I spent a lot of time on configurations. Every time I run the scan, I had to make changes to the configuration. I was repeating the things over and over. And over the time, it became boring. And also, one thing that was lacking in all of these tools was a better UI. So I think it was in March, I went in to create one for myself. Initially, there was no intention to make it open source. The intention was to submit for Box and HackerOne. I did not know if people will like it or not, but I started developing reNgine with a simple concept that will allow me to create scan engines and highly configurable engines, and also that would structure the data in a good UI. But when I developed and showed it to my colleagues, people seemed to like the idea of reNgine, and that's when I decided to make it open source. When I had thought for recon engine myself, I wanted it to have scan engines that could be highly configurable and easily configurable with the existing open source tools, that you could easily plug and play the tools. You can add the new tools, you can remove the tools, like suppose for subdomain discovery, you can bring in any number of n number of tools. And for Similarly, other tools like endpoint discovery, you can bring tools like Gao or Hackroller. You could bring in any. So I just wanted it to be easy and plug and play to use them against the scan engines. I also wanted a scheduler. The reason why I wanted a scheduler has a funny story. So during the day, I had a full-time job, and of course, could not run the recon during the office hours. So I wanted something that could schedule the scans outside of my office hours. I think cron job would have done. Uh, it would have solved the issue, but there was no flexibility, and I also wanted periodic scans as well. So the other feature that I added in reNgine, I just kept developing and over the time. And once it became open source, the feature request made reNgine more awesome. Many people started talking about the vulnerability scan. They started asking about the nuclear integration. I introduced them in the recent releases. So based on the community feedback, I keep on adding the features. It still hasn't met much of my requirement and hasn't met much of the community's requirement. But I'm developing the new features every week. Hopefully soon we meet most of the requirements for it to be an advanced recon tool. When I first released reNgine, it was very basic in terms of functionalities. It was only limited to a good UI, but lacked a lot of many features, advanced feature. But ever since I decided to make it open source, the community started giving more and more feedback and ideas about reNgine, and we have come very far now. We are much more than just a UI. So based on the community's response, people like using reNgine for UI. Of course, a lot of times CLI are much better. But for some reason, people seem to like the idea of UI. In reNgine, that's where we have put in a lot of hard work for better user experience. The other, of course, what sets reNgine from any other tool is that the ability to make correlation between the results produced by various tools. When I say correlation, we use various tools to discover the subdomains and to identify the technologies used to build the web services in those subdomains. We may use certain tools like Aquatone, Vapalizer. We may also sometimes want to sort these subdomains based on the content length. We may also want to sort these domains based on the ports, number of ports open. So what reNgine does a better job than any other tool is to provide a fancy dashboard like UI where you can correlate these results. We gather these results from various tools that are readily available there in the open source and make it easy for you to make the sense out of the humongous data. Suppose our dashboard provides you a tabular structure to view the subdomains, technology behind them, screenshot, HTTP status, ports, and much more. This makes it easy for you to make sense of the data between the several tools. reNgine also allows you to quickly identify, filter, and look up the subdomains endpoints based on the technology, based on the HTTP status, or even sort based on the content length. And I think at the last release, I added the CNAME records as well. So it just makes things very simple. These are the tiny little features that seems cool during the recon. I think this is the reason why people love reNgine. reNgine also allows you to save this data on your database for further reference as well. We use Postgre right now for the database support. So you can always come back after a year to see your recon data, and in the future releases, we also want to have a comparison among the two scan results, and reNgine will still have it after a year or so. The other differences between reNgine and any other tool is that reNgine has highly configurable scan engines. You can probably quickly set up scan engines that may be suitable for few of your targets. And you can use to define, sorry, you can use YAML based configurations to define the tools, define various settings, and use the same settings against the multiple scans. I think you could have done this job more or less in bash using the alias, but reNgine does much better job using the scan engines and with the YAML based configuration. It just makes it more configurable. Also, while there are many tools that may provide this functionality, reNgine also allows you to run multiple scans based on the number of CPU threads available. reNgine is able to run parallel scans using the Celery. The other one, which many other tools may not provide, is scheduling the scans. With cron jobs, you may be able to run the scheduled scan, but nevertheless, reNgine has more flexibility in terms of periodic scans. It may be something like I want to run the scan on 20th of August 2021. You can do that in reNgine. You can also run the scan every 1 hour, every 1 minute or so. reNgine has more flexibility in terms of schedule scan as well. Uh, I think these are the pretty much things that sets reNgine from any other open source tools. With it, we are continuously improving. Several new features like vulnerability scan, nuclear integrations are already in the pipeline. So exciting things are coming up. And also there are multiple tools that works more or less like reNgine. They may have their own pros and cons. While some tool may perform better than reNgine, while reNgine has a better UI than any other tools. So they may be well suited for some of your needs. I have personally used Ecopon, and I have seen few of the screenshots of Pretty Recon. I think it's yet to be released. The guys behind Pretty Recon have done better job in UI than reNgine. Hopefully, I get to see the full version soon. They have done a great job. So use it whatever suits your need. There is no one tool that works for everybody. So shout out to these tools, the Asset Node, the Pretty Recon, the Osmodius. I hope I pronounced this correct, and the Ecopon as well. So let's move into the technology stack. reNgine uses Django as a web framework. Most of the logic is written in Python, and Django serves as a purpose of web framework. We currently use Postgre as a database. In the future, we are planning to bring support for remote database as well. That's a long pending due. Then we use Celery as a task queue, and we use Celery Repeat for database-backed periodic task scheduling as well. And also we use Redis for message broker that handles the messages between Django and Celery. And this entire thing is containerized by Docker. So we decided to use Docker for various reasons. One of the reasons is that most of the tools that we use in reNgine has that on dependencies, and taking care of them, setting up individually was a pain. So we also use Docker to be platform independent. So to make installation process more seamless, and the reason that pen tester need not worry about the dependencies and installation, we containerized everything into Docker. So some of the cool features of reNgine are that reNgine supports highly configurable scan engines. reNgine has YAML-based configuration that allows you to choose the tools, turn on and off the various settings of these tools. There's a lot more to do in YAML-based configuration. I think we'll have a demo on that. reNgine allows you to have a correlation among the various recon results. We do the subdomain discovery, port discovery, endpoint discovery, directory brute force, banner grabbing, CNAME records discovery, and much more. And of course, reNgine doesn't do that, but it uses several other open source tools to make it easy for you. We also support parallel scans, and in the recent releases, we also made support for scheduled scan and periodic scans as well. I think that's pretty much. Let's move into the next slide. So, so what are the tools that we use in reNgine to make it possible for us to do the subdomain discovery, banner grabbing, technology detection, much more, right? Let's talk about them. And to be very honest, reNgine is just a wrapper of UI over these tools. The actual results are provided by these tools, and what reNgine does is just to correlate them. So massive thanks to the creator of these tools. We have been using them, and we may also add a few tools in the future. But as of now, these are the tools that we use. A massive thanks to the project discovery guys. We use most of the tools. We use the nuclei for vulnerability scan. We use HTTPX for your HTTP probe, Nabu for port scan. But we've had some of the feature requests for mask scan is a port scanner. I am yet to decide on this. Also, we use Project Discovery's subfinder for subdomain discovery. We also use OWASP MAS, both active and passive is supported. Michael Hendrickson's Aquatone is used for screenshot and technology detection. Ahmed's we use sublister for subdomain discovery. Tom Hudson, thanks for assetfinder. Again, we use it for subdomain discovery. Carbon Leo and Luke Stephens, we use the GAU. I don't know how it is pronounced. I think it's GAU, G-A-U. Get all URLs is what it stands for. And Hackroller from Luke Stephens for endpoint discovery. And we use DIRSearch for directory and file discovery. Thanks to all these tools. That's all the tools that we use. And as I said, we may add or remove tools anytime based on the community feedback. But thank you so much for the creators of this tool. reNgine is possible because of you all. So if you see the workflow pipeline of reconnaissance in reNgine, the first thing that you always do is define the targets. We do have a fancy UI where you can go and add several targets, and then once you define the target, you can run a scheduled scan, or you can even run a quick scan. So anytime you run a scan, the first thing that it does is a subdomain discovery. Of course, in the recent releases, subdomain discovery is not a compulsory thing. You can run the entire scan on a root domain as well. So the output of subdomain discovery is then passed into two things. One is for port scanning. So the results of subdomain, the list of subdomains is then passed to port scanning to identify the open ports, and then we use the same results and we send it to HTTP probe as well to identify which all web services, which all subdomains are alive and dead. So once we identify the alive and dead subdomains, we send them for visual identification and endpoint discovery, as well as vulnerability scan. If there's a large number of results from the subdomain discovery, finding out the alive domains and dead domains, dead subdomains, makes it very easy for us to send these results to visual identification, vulnerability scan, and endpoints discovery as well. So once you identify the endpoints, we again send it to HTTP probe. We gather all the sub endpoints and again classify them into alive and dead endpoints based on the HTTP status. We use visual identifications Aquatone to identify the technologies used, and of course to gather the screenshots. And for the vulnerability detection, we use nuclei to find out the low-hanging fruits as well. So how does a recon result looks like in reNgine? So this is exactly how it looks like. This is the latest version. In the latest version, we do have some interesting things: the most vulnerable target, the frequently occurred vulnerabilities, and the vulnerability scan summary. These are the few things that I'm currently adding right now. This is the quick view of the dashboard. And once the scan is done, this is how it looks like. As I was talking about the correlation, right? So now it makes it very simple for you to identify. Suppose on the left you have the first column that you have is of subdomain. It has CNAME records as well. If it finds out, it has IP addresses. So the brown IP address is for your, I think it's for CDN. Yeah. So the orange color IP, if you see, that's for CDN IP address, and the blue one that you see is the non-CDN IP address. And similarly, again, the third column that you see is the HTTP status. This makes it very easy for you to identify whether that subdomain is alive or not. And then we have port scans as well. And then we had a subdomain takeover. Now subdomain takeover has been moved to a nuclei for a better detection. Nuclei does a better job. We earlier had used subzac. And then there is a content length as well. So we have by default sorted this entire subdomain based on the content length, and we do have page titles, the technologies that are used to build these subdomains, and then of course we have screenshots. And on the right hand side, the rightmost side, we have directories as well. So suppose if you have done a directory search, it makes it very simple for you to identify the directories as well. So that's how the recon result looks like. And on the vulnerability scan, this is how it looks like. On the left hand side, you have a title, the severity, the vulnerable URL, and the description, and of course when was the vulnerability last seen. This is how the entire UI looks like. We're going to have more on the demo as well. So we had many people asking about the installation instructions for reNgine and how to use it more effectively. I just released the documentation last week. It's already there on reNgine.wiki. Feel free to check. So if you go over here, you have two sections. I'm a developer and I'm a pen tester. If you plan to contribute to reNgine, go over to the section I'm a developer, or if you plan to use reNgine only for information gathering purpose, feel free to go to I'm a pen tester section. So here for all the installation instruction, how to define the scan engine, the YAML configurations, and overall how to use reNgine more effectively, all the instruction has been laid out very clearly here. So let's begin with the installation for reNgine and how to do installation. I'm right now using VPS. The installation instruction has been clearly written here for Linux, Mac, and for Windows WSL as well. So let's quickly begin with, I think you can follow these instructions quickly. Let's install the Docker engine. But before, I have already imported all the GPG keys, and I've also added the stable repo. So I'm not following up these instructions. I'm directly doing the setup. But if you are doing it for the first time, you will have to do both of them. you'll have to add the official GPG key, and you'll have to also set up the stable repo for Docker. So just confirm if Docker is installed or not. Docker minus minus version, it's installed. Similarly, the instruction for Docker Compose has also been given here. I've already done I've already installed the Docker Compose as well. So let's just verify if Docker Compose is running or not. It is. So now we are good to go. The next thing that we need for setting up and running the reNgine is make file. Sorry, make. To install the make, it's pretty simple. Sudo apt install make, which I've already done the installation as well. The next thing that you would want to do is cloning the official repo. But before you clone the official repo, make sure that okay, I don't have it. But before you clone the official repo, make sure that you have git install. Once you confirm that it has been installed, just clone the official repo. And if you have cloned the repo a week back or a month back, since there is since I'm actively developing the reNgine, a lot of changes happens frequently, probably over a week. Feel free to git pull. So if you do git pull, it will pull all the latest changes. It's already up to date right now. And the next thing that you would want to do is editing the certificates. If you go to Nano, you can use any of your favorite editor. Either use Nano or either use Vim. You need to edit this file. Project name, let's just write it BlackHat. Authority name, feel free to write whatever you want here. Just make sure to use secure passwords for your certificates, BlackHat. And the domain name, if you plan to use a custom domain name, suppose something like recon.yogeshoja.com, so feel free to write the domain name here. So I'm just going to write blackhat.com, country code, everything is perfectly fine. So let's save it. And the other thing, so if you want to verify that, so just verify if all the settings has been properly done. Once it's done, just run the make certs. This will make all the certificates. It should not take a long time. Okay, certificate also has been generated. The other thing that you would need to do is make build. This is the one which takes a lot of time. Have some patience, grab a coffee. This is gonna take a long time, probably. It should take anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. So the installation for reNgine is completed. I guess it took around 25 minutes or so. Once it is done, you can see the successful message here to know that the installation was successful. So the next step to run the reNgine is make up. This also, for the first time, if you're using make up for the first time, it might take some time. It will download the Postgre and I think a couple of other images as well, Redis, I think Celery and Postgre. So it might take some time, probably 2 to 3 minutes. I think it should be good. So it is pretty quick. So once reNgine is running, if you want to have a look at the logs, it's pretty simple. Just type make logs. You can see what is going on here. So let's go to our IP and see if it is running or not. So details, it's running, right? So you will also need to create the username. To do that, make username. So it will ask you for the username and password. Make sure that you use a strong password because again, data sometimes are sensitive, right? So root yes. Okay, so let's log in. Not now. Yeah, so that's how you install the reNgine. So once reNgine installation is done, let's look at what reNgine can perform. The first thing is, of course, adding the target. Let's add a sample target. We can define hacker1.com. And the next thing that you would want to do is define your scan engines. So this is where I'll spend a little more time talking about what are the scan engines. So you can define any names for your scan engine. So let's name it test name. So you need to define what exactly this engine does. So for our case, it might do subdomain, it might not do subdomain discovery, but it might do a port scan, directory file search. So let's just make it do everything, and then so we do have a YAML based configuration. This is where this is what makes reNgine more powerful in terms of any other recon tool out there. So if you see the YAML based configuration here, we have defined for subdomain discovery, the port scan, the visual identification, the directory and file search, interface, the URL, and of course vulnerability scan. So the first object that you see is a usage tool. Here you define what all tools that you want to use. So you can go here to see what all are the list of tools that are supported. If you go here over to the official documentation for pen testers, you can go to define the scan engines. Yeah, so the options that are supported are either you can use all, you can use MS passive, MS active, subfinder, sublister, and assetfinder. For our case, we can use all. We can use all. This will include all of the tools and the threads. Again, how many number of threads that you want to run the subdomain discovery. You can define it as per your wish. By default, it's 10. Even if you don't define, it's going to be 10. So the other one is a port scan. So it will scan all of the ports. Again, if you go to the scan engine documentation, you can see what are other things that are supported. By the way, I forgot to tell you, there are a couple of more features that are supported that are word list. So word list is an optional. So if you want it to have a word list, it's pretty simple. That's for subdomain brute force. You can add word list, and then so now you need to bring the cert name. So how do you bring the cert name? You can come here to the word list. Once you come here, you'll have an option to add the word list. I'm just going to add the word list here, sample word list, and I'll choose one of the files. So you can upload the word list here. And then this has 541 word list count. You can copy the sort name here and just use this word list here. Very simple. Similarly, we also introduced the configurations as well. So tools like subfinder and MS active, they use that on configurations, right? So you can see one of the samples of MS config. The way to use that is pretty simple again. So you can go here, copy this entire config file. Of course, you need to change it according to your need. So just copy this, add new configurations. So configuration. You can have as many configurations as you want. So it's MS active, save configuration. And then you also need to have this short name here. So what are the options supported again? If you want it to be for your MS config, use MS_config. If you want it to be for your subfinder_config, use subfinder_config. So you can come here. And for your MS, the one which we just now defined, that's MS_active, right? So if you see here, that's the sort name. So that's how you refer to the settings here. And then now you have port scans, you have visual identifications. Again, list of options that are supported has been written very clearly here in the documentation. Please follow them very carefully. There are a lot of options that is not written here that are optional that you might discover there, which might make the scan more effective. Similarly, directory and file search, what are the extensions that you want to search? Let's just write txt, so it will only search for the txt files. Now recursive false is written here. If we turn the recursive true, it will also go and look for all the subdirectories as well for the directories and files. Now there is the other, which is called fetch URL. It supports two tools right now. Let's go get all URLs and hackcrawler. If you set the intensity to normal, it's only going to fetch the endpoints for the root domain. But if you set the intensity to, I forgot the options. I need to look here. Options, I guess it was aggressive, yeah. So if you set the option to aggressive, this will fetch all the endpoints for all the subdomains. Now similarly in the vulnerability scan, you can define the concurrency, you can define the templates that you want to use, and you can define the severity. So if you want to just ignore information vulnerability and you want to focus on critical, high, low, medium, that's how you define, and you can add the engine here. It was that simple. So we have defined our engine. That's a test name. Let's just make it more identifiable. Let's just make it BlackHat. Let's update the engine. So once we have identified the engine, we can go back to our targets. And if you want to scan, there are two options. You can either do the quick scan or you can either do the scheduled scan. We'll talk about the scheduled scan in a few minutes. Let's quickly do the quick scan. So you can choose what kind of scanner that you want to use. I'm just using the BlackHat that we just defined. And just for your information, there are stuff that are given. It's defined what kind of engine it is. Either it's a default engine or the custom engine. So you can click on start scan, and then it will start performing the scan. So this is how exactly the result comes like. This is the result of the subdomains that are discovered. So I was talking about correlation always, right? So this is exactly how the correlation performs. So you have the subdomains, IP addresses. So there's a CDN IP address, the status, HTTP status, the ports that are open, the content length, the page title, the technology that are used, and the screenshots. So you can see you can go from one screenshot to another one, and you can obviously click in here, just go to the page as well. Just make things very simple. And if we had performed the directory scan, it would have come over here as well. So the interesting thing about reNgine is that you can filter based on the content length, you can filter based on the page title, you can filter based on the technology. So if I want only the subdomains that have Drupal as technologies, it was very simple, right? If I want subdomain that has port number 8080 open, so I can pretty much see all the subdomain that has port number 8080 open. It was very simple. Similarly, I can also filter based on the IP addresses. So I can filter the IP addresses. I can even filter based on the CNAME records. We can do pretty much a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. So that's all about here. You can also sort based on the content length, which has the minimum content length, which has the maximum content length. It just helps you identify if there is interesting thing going on over there. You can also search based on the page title. Anything that is displayed on the screen, you can search. So if you want to search the page that has page not found on its title, it's very simple. You can go page not found. So it will display all the pages that has page not found as a title. In the future releases, we want it to be a custom filter that allows you to search the page title like this. It's coming up. We are still working on it. So that's all about the subdomain that I discovered. So you can also export the subdomains. To export the subdomain, it's pretty simple. Just click on export subdomain txt format and just open it with a text file. So you have all this. You can use it with other tools as well. Also, if you want it to export the HTTP URLs, you can do that as well. Now let's look into the endpoints. So here in the endpoints, it's the same thing like subdomain discovery. You have the endpoint, you have the HTTP status, you have content types, you have content length. So this image, the PNG image, has one of the highest content length. This can be used to identify if there is something interesting there the endpoints are not. If you sort it based on the content length, there are endpoints that are status 301. Of course, the content length is 0, and page 429, that's forbidden, I guess, with the page status content length is 12. You can filter them based on the file extensions as well to some extent. Okay, we are still looking at it to improve it more. So if you just search for PNG, you can find out all the endpoint that has PNG. 301, you can identify them very quickly. And then you can also sort based on the content type, text /plain. So it will display all the content type with the text /plain. I think we can do image /png. So you can filter all the endpoints that has content type is image/png, and of course similarly you can search based on the page title as well. That's all about endpoint. So this is how the vulnerability scan result looks like. On the left, you have the title, and the second column, you have the severity. So this is by default sorted based on the severity, and then you have the vulnerable URL and the description of the vulnerability, and when it was last seen. Again, you can sort based on the last seen. You can sort based on the severity, and of course, vulnerable URL as well. Uh, that's all about vulnerabilities. We spoke about configurations, vulnerabilities, and of course, reNgine supports Slack notifications as well. So you can create the Slack hook, and then once the scan is completed, it just sends you the scan notifications. That's pretty cool, right? That is done. We spoke about word list, configurations, schedule scan. That is pretty cool. So let's quickly schedule the scan for hackerone.com. So you can find out the schedule scan here. You can choose what kind of scheduler that you want to have, periodic scan or cloud scan. So I would love to have periodic scan that does every 5 days. You can go here, you can choose 5 days, and what kind of scan do you want to perform. That's a full scan. You can keep it here in the schedule scan. So you can see the description here. It says full scan for hackerone.com. Frequency will run every 5 days. Last run never. It has never run. We just scheduled it. It will run after 5 days, and run count how many times it has run, and whether it's a one-off task or not. Your cloud scans are always one-off task, while your periodic scans are not a one-off task, and you can turn on and off here. So we also have ability to run multiple scans at a time. You can run thousands of scans at a time. So let's go thousands. Click on these, scan multiple targets. So you can scan all of these targets at a time. So that's pretty much about multiple scans as well. And that's all. That's all the demo about reNgine. So what exactly do we need to help? reNgine does actually need to help on a lot of things. reNgine is a beginner-friendly open source project. We do have a lot of open issues that are yet to be solved. We also planned with Fisher. We plan to bring the bounty system in the reNgine as well. Hopefully, very soon we plan to bring the bounty system so that to encourage you to solve these issues that are open on reNgine. So it's again I said it's a beginner-friendly open source project. If you have not never done any open source project, we encourage you to do so. There are many people who have contributed to reNgine and have never contributed to open source before contributing to reNgine. That was the first time, and we are happy and proud of your first pull request. Just feel free to raise them. And thanks to these individuals for making reNgine awesome by fixing bugs, resolving issues, and by creating the PR. I'm not going to name each of them. There's a long list. Thank you so much, everybody, for creating the PR and resolving the issues. reNgine is possible because of you guys. And thanks to Fisher and Imra. Thank you for sponsoring. And there are a couple of other people who really deserve thanks. Thanks to Patrick, Josh and Haddix, Sec Army team, and Jishano and Stock. These guys were the people who first announced the reNgine to the community. Of course, I did not have so much reach to tell people that reNgine was released. Thanks to these people, and of course, thanks to Josh and Haddix for the recon methodologies. reNgine is highly dependent on his methodologies, and it's just a wrapper of UI and few of the cool features over the methodologies that are drafted and documented by him. So thanks again to these guys, and thanks again to the entire security community for supporting the reNgine. Thank you so much for attending this talk. I hope to answer your questions and catch you soon. Thank you so much.